Welcome to Daily Tottenham Hotspur News with me, Barnaby Slater, live and finally a chance to enjoy a Monday morning after an important 3 points against Manchester United yesterday. But as ever with Spurs, worrying rumours as well, as it looks like Arne Slot may be looking to replace Virgil van Dijk with, in my opinion, our best young player. Meanwhile, I'll be going through all the quotes from yesterday's victory and giving my thoughts, as well as discussing a fascinating deep dive that the BBC have done on Daniel Levy's tenure at Spurs. With all of the protests yesterday, where do you stand on his and ENIC's future at the club? Let's discuss it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Doing these shows live every day on YouTube at 12:30 now. So come and get involved in the comments. And I try and read as many comments as I can and give my opinions on all of your thoughts. I'm also getting closer and closer to 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if that's where you're watching this, please do give me a like. Please do press subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. You can also hear this on the podcast platforms, be that Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Just type in the Spurred On podcast and come and give me a follow or a subscribe and a rating there. And you can listen to me when you're out having a run or a walk or driving your car or whatever. But isn't it nice to have a Monday morning where actually things aren't depressing as F? I, for one, just feel like, I don't know, the gloom is starting to lift. And actually, Nick in Hong Kong in the comments has said, "G'day, Barnaby. The doom and gloom is slowly lifting onwards and upwards." I think for me, just off the top of my head at the start, really, just seeing Wilson Odobert come off the bench, watching Vicario making saves, Madison coming to get the ball off the back four and off Vicario, playing in that kind of quarterback position, really showing us what we've missed. And if you think about it, it's such fine margins at the elite level in the Premier League, isn't it? Because as much as I love Kinski and I think he's going to be a brilliant goalkeeper, do I think he would have got down to that save that Vicario got down to his bottom right? I'm not sure he would have done, at which point, so that makes it 1-1. And without Madison, would whoever was playing instead of Madison been on his toes as Madison was to follow up that shot? Maybe not. I actually watched the replay back, and if you watch that shot from Bergvall, which, by the way, hasn't been discussed enough, he got a really great shot off with his left foot there. But if you watch it, as he hits the shot, Madison is the only one in the box who's on his toes, on his front foot, and makes that move towards Onana in case there's a rebound. So they are the small margins. And maybe we would have lost that game if we hadn't had those injuries back. And maybe that's exactly what Big Ange Postecoglou has been saying. And, you know, on that basis, as cynical as I have sometimes been, and I'm happy to put my hands up when things that I say, maybe I have to row back on a little bit. It has been difficult to watch us lose so many games. And I have talked about what I've seen as naivety with Ange Postecoglou tactically. And I will say there's still some of that, just our kind of almost refusal to stop first-time crosses. It's very easy for opposition teams to get out wide and then draw both our fullback and kind of the wide forward towards the ball and then lay it back for first-time cross. And that's exactly what happened for Xerxes' chance that he should have scored in that second half yesterday. So there is still some naivety. I would like us to be a little bit more passionate about stopping crosses and about marking the back stick. But also, I do have to agree with Ange Postecoglou, where yesterday we had Vicario and Madison back, and they were, responsible in essence for us winning that game. So full credit to the team. It wasn't a vintage performance. I've been listening to The Rest is Football this morning with Gary Lineker and Micah Richards, and they were saying it was, two very poor teams lacking in confidence. I can't disagree with the lacking in confidence. I thought Spurs did play more Ange ball yesterday than we've seen for quite a while, and that was good enough for me. And obviously, just getting the 3 points, we go up into 12th, and Man United now languishing down in 15th, only a couple of points ahead of West Ham in 16th. We've got Ipswich coming up this weekend. If we can put in a performance there, maybe get a few more players back. And like I said right at the top, just seeing Wilson Odobert come off the bench and beat players with acceleration, God, it's like a brave new world, isn't it? Literally haven't seen that since September when Odobert was injured from. And it's just very exciting to me that if we can keep Odobert fit, then players from opposition teams' defenders will be drawn to him. They'll have to double up and treble up on him, and that will leave more space for other Spurs players in the midfield and in the forward line. So that's what I'm looking for, as well as I'm now completely, basically single-minded about wanting Tottenham to just wrap those players who still have to come back from injury in cotton wool and only play them in the Europa League. I'm talking about Van der Ven. I'm talking about Romero. I'm talking about Solanke. I think we should be very careful with James Madison. I'm glad he came off after 60 minutes. Let's not run him into the ground. The Europa League is everything to us now. Yes, I want us to go on a little run in the Premier League. Of course I do. But the Europa League is everything. Nick in Hong Kong says, Jed Spence is looking dangerous. What a performance from Jed Spence. I'll bring some of the quotes from Ange about some of the players in a bit, but he just looks like a player who is growing into himself in front of our very eyes, who's really starting to believe in himself as a properly top-notch Premier League fullback who can play both sides. And he is going to save Tottenham Hotspur a lot of money. And I'm afraid, as hard as it is for anyone ever to want to give Daniel Levy any credit, and there'll be a lot of stick going Daniel Levy's way later in this episode when I go into that BBC deep dive that they did about his tenure. But all the reports from Conte and other managers and people with that Jed Spence was Daniel Levy signing, and it's taken a long time. But it looks to me like we have a proper player on our hands. And I don't want to sound negative. I'm not going to be negative. I think he's amazing. And I think we did an amazing bit of business signing him up to a new contract earlier this season before he'd even started playing for us regularly. But it's really important to me now that Jed Spence pushes on so that this isn't just a one-season thing and he doesn't start believing the hype and then resting on his laurels. Let's make this into him being our best fullback for the next 5-6 years and him becoming an England regular, because he has the talent and he's shown it at the top level against some of the best teams. He's been the best player on the park for us for months now. And yeah, for me, I just want him to really push on and become a legend at this club. He's got every bit of potential to do that. Two Wheels Life in the comments says, hi Barnaby, great to watch after a win. Jed Spence for me was the difference yesterday. Now a few of the senior players are back. He seemed to have a lot more space to ply his trade. Yeah, and listen, one thing I'd say about him, he's also one of the very few players on the park yesterday brave enough to drop a shoulder and try and break the press by beating a man. And that's why I'm waxing lyrical so much about Wilson Odobert, another player who could potentially beat a man. And if Wilson Odobert comes on the pitch and we've got Jed Spence on the pitch at the same time who can beat a man in the wide positions, and then maybe Brennan Johnson comes on the pitch, after 60, 65 minutes of games, there will be so much space for Johnson to run into and do what he does best, which is get up to full pace, open his legs up and get that ball into that corridor between the goalkeeper and the defenders, for then players like Tell to come in and run onto, or Sonny if he's on the pitch, or Odobert, and score those goals that really last season were what Ange ball was all about. And this season, certainly in the last few months when the injuries have been happening, haven't been being scored quite as much. Guys, over 200 of you already watching this concurrently. Thank you so much. And 40 likes. Let's get up to 50 likes. The more likes that we get, the more people will see this video. Really appreciate all your support. Brandon DeGeorge, thank you for your comments. Says Jed has been an absolute gem. I've been Ange in from the start and still back him. Give him till the end of his contract and watch how the youngsters will flourish, all peaking around the same time. Listen, Ange said, didn't he, earlier this season, I really hope that I'm the man to benefit from these youngsters in the next 3 years or so. And he's got a 4-year contract, Ange Postecoglou. And listen, I severely doubt there will be any harder periods of time for Big Ange than he's just gone through in the last couple of months. And it looks like he's got through it. It looks like Levy has taken his finger off the trigger button, off the big red button in the suitcase, the nuclear button. And Levy, has been given so much stick down the years for how easily he sacks managers. Well, he had more reason to sack Big Ange Postecoglou than many of the other managers that he sacked for far less, and he didn't. So it can't be said that he's not listening to the fan base, or that he's not listening to people maybe on the football side within the club who are saying to him, no, we have to stick with this man. And once again, I'll say it, the key for me will be next season and the rest of this season, of course, the rest of this season to go on a deep run in that Europa League, but also keep those players fit when they come back from injuries. Keep them fit. No more recurrences of injuries. Ange has mentioned in the last few days how they've had a real look into why these players are getting re-injured and trying to make changes. And let's hope that those changes really work out. The Wizard, thank you for your comment, mate, and loving your Kermit the Frog profile picture. Hi, B-Man. I thought Tell picked up some great positions all over the box yesterday. If he can find his shooting boots, we have a great player. Can't wait for the Tell times Odobert link up. Yeah, I like the look of Matthias Tell. I agree with what you said about his shooting boots. I think he looks like a player who hasn't played many minutes And he hasn't, because at Bayern Munich, he wasn't getting in ahead of Harry Kane or Jamal Musiala or any of those brilliant forward players that they had. So he is coming up to scratch at Tottenham. I loved a little social media post he did where he showed a picture of him against Man United with the comment, chose the wrong club, with the clown emoji, showing that he's getting back at people who said he should have gone to Manchester United instead of Spurs. And yeah, he just looked like a player. He had a couple of shot opportunities, and it looked like a player who just wasn't quite in rhythm, but that will come. And the key for him is we need him to stay fit. And we need him to stay fit until Solanke gets back, but also when Solanke is back as well, so that he can take minutes off Son Heung-Min on the left, maybe even some minutes on the right as well. And so by that point, he will then be up to speed. And if we give him chances then across the box, I fancy him to finish them. Really, really exciting young player. Be interesting to see what happens with that kind of potential £55 million permanent transfer. Let's see what else is being said in the comments. Brandon de Jong says, we'll win the Europa League and qualify for the Champions League. Come on, you Spurs. It's amazing how quickly we all change after a win, isn't it? I can't say that I don't wonder whether we could do that, but let's see what happens. Cantab, thank you. He's a regular. Thank you for your comments. Says, love to see Spencer's right back in next match. I've been saying that. I'd like to see Pedro Porro get a little rest and then a real muscular fullback partnership of a Doggy and Spence, but maybe it's a bit soon for a Doggy because he didn't get minutes, did he, yesterday? And he's been out for a long time. And obviously he had an injury at the back end of last season as well that kept him out of the Euros. So, yeah, maybe it'll be a bit longer before that. But I thought Porro was all right yesterday. But of course, as ever, just that is where teams really pinpoint against us to cause trouble. Kind of balls over the top or balls in between Porro when he's and the centre-backs when he's caught further up the pitch. PKD81 on Odobert says, it was great to see Odobert back on the pitch yesterday. I predict big things in the Odobert and Tell link up in the near future. Yeah, they're best mates, aren't they, as well? Tell said that he spoke to Odobert about joining Spurs. And that was one of the reasons he chose to come. Okay, so some quotes from after the game yesterday. Ange Postecoglou said the following: I think the important thing is that we did win today. It was an important game for us and it's an important week. We needed to put in a performance today to get us the result, and I think we did that. That coupled with the fact that we've got some significant players back and they got through the game. They got through unscathed and really contributed. It was important for us. It signals a little bit of an opportunity for us to push on from here. That's true. And of course, we've got another week off this week before the Ipswich game. These have been the first games in such a long time where basically we haven't had shorter time off to prepare than our opponents. And although I was a little bit worried last week, those of you who are watching my live videos last week will have seen, I was like, I think United will have had some time with Ruben Amorim to really kind of get some of his patterns understood. But it was excellent, really, wasn't it? That it was Manchester United who really suffered from injuries and illness, and they didn't have a bench to come on. And although we didn't wipe the floor with them by any means, and they had their chances, I did think overall, and let me know what you think in the comments, I did think overall that Tottenham deserved the victory. And that's what Ange is saying there as well. He was asked about being able to bring on 5 senior substitutes, which of course wasn't something that Manchester United could do. And Ange said this, yeah, it makes a massive difference. Getting guys like Vicario and Madison contributing straight away, you can see the quality they have and the presence that they have. As you said, I can put guys on, and for guys like Brennan and Wilson, Vicario, Madison, to a certain extent, it might take them 1 or 2 games to get up to speed. But the fact we have them available, yeah, it's an enormous boost for us. Completely agree. Limpy Down Under in the comments says, after those off-field medical recommendations, Tottenham announced a new medical facility. That's true. That was some news I brought last week. I don't know if that's reactive or that was probably always part of the plan. Ayadeji, thank you for your comment. Danso played well as well. Yes, I think it's important for us to call out Kevin Danso. He's been thrown straight into the Tottenham team for the 2 cup games. And then there was his Premier League debut. He'd only previously played his Premier League debut for Spurs. So he'd only previously played in the Premier League for Southampton, and he didn't get much game time at Southampton. That was a few years ago when he was young and on loan there. He did grow up in Milton Keynes, so he speaks great English, and I think that has probably helped with his ability to adapt. And he looks like he's been at the club a fair while already. I said it yesterday after the watch along, but for those of you who didn't see, I think at the moment I've seen enough in Danso to say that he is more comfortable in Ange's system than Dragoshin is yet. He's a bit older than Dragoshin, so maybe not a huge surprise, but he's more comfortable on the ball, Danso, than I thought he would be. And yesterday, I have to say, I'm going to give Danso full credit for that chance that Garnacho missed in the first half, where he really should have leveled it up for them. But Danso absolutely threw his entire body on the line to put him off. And although he didn't get the tackle in and deflect the ball, you could tell that Garnacho had big Kevin Danso in his peripheral vision. He was like, got to get this away quicker than I would have thought, because otherwise I'm going to get hit by big Kev. And got to give him credit. I thought he was excellent. And just a little bit of a knock, and that's why he was taken off a bit earlier. I'll give you the quote from Ange a bit later in this episode, but Ange says it should be okay. And that is actually the benefit of Ange being able to have more subs to choose from for games, is now if players are playing with a little bit of a niggle, he's able to take them off and replace them with senior players. So that's really, really good. Fokoff, thank you, mate, for your comment. Appreciate it. Says Bayern Munich and German media says Tell is better through the middle. And I believe Matthias Tell himself has said he prefers to play in the number 9. And I've certainly, for one, and let me know what you guys think in the comments, I, for one, was pleased that he was playing through the middle yesterday with Sonny back out on the left. I thought that was a mistake from Postecoglou to start Sonny on the left against Aston Villa. And we learned that the hard way, but that's how it goes. KK, with a little bit of a more realistic take from his point of view, says this: I don't want to be negative, but the youngsters' promise thing is for the birds. At teams like Barcelona, youngsters have to perform from their first game while they are out and don't get many chances. Well, listen, Barcelona have La Masia, don't they? The famed Barcelona Academy. Barcelona get all of the best young players from around Spain, certainly from around Catalonia. So it's not quite the same. And Tottenham kind of breeding youngsters through and giving them opportunities. It's not quite as simple as they have to be brilliant from the start or they won't get a chance. Listen, they do eventually have to prove that they're worth their place in the first team, that's for sure. And they will have to take the place of another team player in the first team. And that is what Lucas Bergvall is currently doing. He's getting in the first team ahead of Yves Bissouma and ahead of Pat Matasar. So fair play to him. And I thought he had a decent first half yesterday, Bergvall. But I think there's a little bit more room for breath at Spurs for their youngsters than there is at La Masia in Barcelona. But I really appreciate your comment. Jubilani, thank you for your comments. Says, may Spurs sign Cunha of Wolves and Eze of Crystal Palace for Premier League experience, please. At the back, Zabani. Yeah, listen, as you know, I love to talk about all the Tottenham transfer rumours, and it would be amazing if Tottenham this summer could supplement their young, hungry squad. And listen, when we start to get these players back, we really do realize, I really realized quickly how good a young squad we have. But if we could supplement them with the signings of players like Cunha and Eze, and I like Zabani as well, I like Housen as well there, although I think we're relatively, when fit, well stocked now in the centre-back department. Don't forget that Vuskovic is going to be coming back from Westerlo on loan next season. He's a young, exciting centre-back talent. So, yeah, maybe not Zabani, but it'll be interesting to see whether players with Premier League experience might come in. I also really like Semenyo from Bournemouth. Such an exciting player. And he's physical as well. I want us to bring some more physicality coming in. Jojo Sammy says, can Solanke and Tell play together? Well, that remains to be seen. Like I said, I think for me, let's get Solanke back fit and then allow Tell to take some minutes off Son Heung-Min on the left potentially first. Or as Solanke is coming back into fitness, give him 20 minutes at the end of games to start and Tell starts the game, etc., etc. We need to have a squad of 25 who are all good enough to play Ange's system, because it's clear that also we're going to get injuries. As devastating as it is, that is clear what is going to happen. Mike Novels, thank you for your comment, mate. I really appreciate it. Mike says this: having supported Spurs for 70 years, I can remember my team being in a bad way financially, so I think Levy has been terrific in building the finances while building a fantastic stadium. Listen, Mike, I'm a bit older as well, maybe not as old as you, but I remember when under Irving Scholar, Tottenham very nearly went bankrupt, and there were illicit payments and a lot of problems, points deductions. We were banned from the FA Cup at one point. This was in the early 90s. So yes, Levy needs to take credit where it's due for that, but also, and I will go into this deep dive that the BBC have done later, we have to be, honest and say that while he deserves credit for growing the club through infrastructure and keeping us financially sustainable, there have also been decisions made by Daniel Levy down the years that optically have looked appalling. Nearly 400 of you watching concurrently now, guys. Thank you so much. We've just reached 100 likes. Those of you who haven't pressed that like button, please do. And if you like daily Tottenham Hotspur live news every weekday, 12:30, please do press subscribe and come and join my channel in this great community. I'm nearly at 15,000 subscribers, only about 700 away now, guys. So if you're not a subscriber, please do press that subscribe button. Okay, Ange was asked what yesterday's win can do for the team. He said, I certainly believe there is still a hell of a lot on offer for us this back half of the season. Europe is the obvious one, but even in the league, I think we could make inroads. We're not happy with where we are. It's unacceptable that we're in the position we are, but the circumstances have dictated that to a great extent. The circumstances will change. The guys who came back in today will improve and make us stronger. There's still 2 or 3 more on the horizon who will also come back. I think that gives us an opportunity before long. It's only one game, but I thought today was important, and we're going to start that progress. Getting 3 points makes us think, okay, it's starting to make an impact. He was then asked about the return of confidence. He said, I don't know if confidence is the right word, but you're right about lifting the mood, and I sensed it in training, not just with the players, but even the coaches. We've hardly trained the last 2 months. We've just gone out there and tried to work on things without putting a physical toll on the players because of the game schedule. We've had to do it with under 21s and under 18 players. This week, all of a sudden, we've had 20 senior fit players, which gives everyone a boost. Training is more energetic and up tempo. The players and the coaches all respond to that, and it feeds in. That's why I thought it was important today that we got a win. We can do that again this week and build into a big week. There's no doubt. The players understand when they say the likes of Vicario, Madison, Johnson all training again, they feel good as well. As much as all players want to play, they also knew they needed help, and they got it this week. So yeah, really important point there that I haven't really been thinking about. And, just another example of how no matter what opinions people like I have, or all of us, when we talk to our mates who support Spurs, and what I've been saying about, are we overtraining or are we undertraining? The reality is it hasn't crossed my mind even once to think about that a lot of those players who have been training haven't even been able to play in training against other peers. They've had to play against under 18s and under 21s, and that will, of course, cause a natural lowering in standards, which will then take itself to the pitch on a weekend because you won't be as attuned to the top level that you need to be at to win games of football in the Premier League. So listen, Ange has made a really good point there, and I'm sure he's been making that point to Daniel Levy and Johan Lang and Scott Munn over the past few months. And credit to Levy for not pulling the trigger on him, where a lot of us have been wondering whether maybe it was the right time. Listen, I'll throw my hands up. I've said it, haven't I? I've said, it has reminded me at times watching Big Ange's Spurs has reminded me of times of watching Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds. Just like every pundit saying, I love to watch this team. And I loved watching his Leeds as well, but they were so open at the back and so easy to score against. But the reality is, as our levels go up because our players get fitter and they're available on the pitch, but also the training levels go up and we get more free weeks because of all the games we've been playing previously, and now we've got less cup competitions to be in, then you would expect that level to rise again and again and us to really potentially take things to another level. And I personally hope to see that from the Ipswich game at the weekend. Ange was asked about James Madison's display as well as his goal celebration. He said, everybody has mentioned his celebration, but I didn't see it, so I can't comment on it. But it doesn't surprise me that Madders didn't accept what was being said about him and threw a shot back over the bow. That's talking about what Roy Keane was saying about James Madison last week, where he basically was like, no Spurs player will be thinking, oh, great, we've got James Madison back, he's going to really change it. Well, Madders, I thought, had a good game for 60 minutes yesterday and really took responsibility on the pitch, which we need more of our midfield players to do in terms of making space to get the ball off our back line and off the keeper. He carried on to say, it's just great to have him back. He's a quality player. If you look at his goals returned from midfield this year, which is 9 Premier League goals, by the way, it's still right up there. He got frustrated when he got injured. And to be honest, we didn't think he would be back for a couple of weeks, but he's worked awfully hard in training and done everything right to make sure he was available. I think this is the key thing for us, and we've seen it with all our players, particularly in recent times. The injured lads are all desperate to contribute. They've seen what the other guys have gone through and are just pushing hard. Even Brennan, Wilson, Destiny, they were really keen to be involved today. There was no more me holding them back. They wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, I'm pleased. I thought Madders took his goal well and contributed to us getting a victory. So actually, I really love to see Ange Postecoglou waxing lyrical about James Madison, because for me, Madders is an arm round the shoulder kind of player. He's a carrot rather than a stick kind of player. And he needs to feel like he's one of those players. He needs to feel like he's the most important player at the club. I'm sure of that. And if he feels that, if he senses that, then his ego grows and his belief grows, and he bosses games. He goes to get the ball in that quarterback position. He plays passes through to Sonny like he did yesterday, just absolutely cutting through the entirety of the opposition side. And we need him back in that kind of form like he was at the beginning of last season. So wrap him in cotton wool. Yeah, start him by just playing him for 60 minutes here and there, and then get him perfectly fit and ready for the Europa League run, which is everything to us now. Absolutely everything to us. Fokov says, I like Danto. Was he hurt at the end there? Well, that leads me into my next quote from Ange. Ange said this: Kevin Danso, Rodrigo Bentancur, and Sonny all picked up knocks. They should be fine, but the beauty now is that we can allow them to rest and recover rather than throwing them straight out back there. AB says in the comments, thank you for your comment. He says, if it wasn't for a few excellent saves from Vicario and Garnacho's atrocious finishing, we could easily have lost that game. United were poor. I wouldn't be too quick to say we've turned the corner yet. Now listen, AB, thank you so much for your comment. I completely agree. However, let's not forget, against Aston Villa away, Sonny should have equalised, shouldn't he? And I don't think Aston Villa realistically are going away from that game in the cup and saying, you know, Spurs should have equalised and been in that game. They're probably not. And so it's the Premier League. Clubs make chances against each other. That's just the reality. Even the best, even Liverpool, if you saw their game yesterday, Wolves had a real chance in the last couple of minutes to, as the ball came across the box, and it was Kwanzaa, their centre-back, who came on as a sub, who stopped that chance right in front of goal, about 6 yards out. So clubs make chances against even the best. And Vicario saves, I don't think is something to be like, oh, we were lucky. It's because we had him back that he made those saves. And listen, I also was quite impressed with how Vicario dealt with the high ball from corners and set pieces yesterday, because you could tell straight away Man United trying to put it on top of his head, trying to bring back the old narrative. And I'm really hopeful that Kinski and Vicario working together in training are kind of learning off each other. Kinski learning some kind of techniques to be a better shot stopper, because Vicario is totally elite as a shot stopper. And then where Kinski is really good is being assertive off his line. High starting position, more aggressive, more assertive, coming out, punching free kicks and set pieces. And there was certainly one corner that was right on Vicario's head yesterday, and he got a good fist out to it, and I was impressed. Maisie's Adventure, thank you, Maisie, for your message, says the following. Oh, hold on, I've got to find it again now. Where was it, Maisie's Adventure? Anyway, I think you were saying that because of financial fair play, maybe there's an opportunity to sign Mainu and Garnacho from Manchester United. Well, I like Kobe Mainu. Manchester United and Ruben Amorim have said they need to sell players before they can buy anything, buy anyone. Yeah, here it is. It's, Maisie says we should buy Garnacho and Mainu of United for their FFP, show real intentions. Yeah, I mean, I think we are looking for young, hungry talent, and certainly ideally homegrown talent. Mainu is that, but you'd have to think there'll probably be clubs willing to pay higher wages sniffing about Kobe Mainu in the summer if indeed he was being allowed to leave, which is a possibility. Robert Grace, thanks for your message, says Tell in the middle is good. He just needs to relax a bit. He looks like he feels the weight of expectation. I think he's just, I think that's a good point. I think he's just trying a bit hard. He's at a new club. He really wants to impress. And that's why I think maybe he snatched a few chances yesterday, but he's clearly a talent. Postecoglou was also asked post-match if he had any sympathy for Ruben Amorim and other managers now struggling with injuries. I thought his reply was funny. He said this: if I check my office, I don't have any sympathy cards from other managers, so that hasn't happened. There's definitely a few. I could see Ruben there, players out of position, kids on the bench. Well, welcome to my world. But that's for one game. Now do that for 2 months. Do that for 2 months. Any club, 2 months. I thought Man United were good today considering all that. And we had our days when we were good too. We beat Liverpool in this spell. So bullish from Ange Postecoglou once again. Let me know what you think of Ange's quotes after the game. Do you think Ange during this period has talked about the injuries too much? Or do you think he's right to, and he's protecting his players and protecting himself? Now the key thing is, take it into Ipswich next week. We cannot do what we've done all season, and after a good result, then follow it up with a Dr. Tottenham moment. We cannot do that for Ipswich. We have to go there with our players back. Ipswich will be well organised. They got a good result with 10 men against Aston Villa this weekend at Villa Park. So it won't be easy by any means, but Tottenham can go there with a bit more confidence, more players back, and hopefully play them off the park and score some goals. Heidi in the comments, thank you, mate, says that Danso last-ditch tackle reminded me of a certain Ledley King. Well, Ledley King, one of the great centre-backs in Tottenham's history, only ever left his feet. He always stood up, only ever left it in the very, very last moment. And I think you're talking about that Arjen Robben chance for Chelsea at White Hart Lane, where Ledley King made up about 50 yards on Arjen Robben, one of the quickest players in the last few generations of top-level footballers, and Ledley King got a last-ditch tackle in out for a corner. Adeji says, will Ashley Phillips get a chance next year? I have to say, I haven't seen a lot of Phillips. He's at Stoke on loan, and I don't get the sense that Ange really rates him. I'm not sure that he's comfortable enough on the ball, but with someone, a centre-back of that age, who's very young, just like Dragoshin, that can improve with confidence, with growth. So maybe another loan, maybe next year for Phillips, and ideally at a team who play a bit of football, and we can see him improve. Elvin Wilson, thanks for your comment, says, I think for the summer we need a very strong number 6. Yeah, they are highly sought after, the most difficult players to get in the modern era, number 6s, as we could have seen or have seen when Manchester City, since they lost Rodri, just been on such a terrible run. So hard to replace those players, and eventually they found one this January, and they seem to have picked up already. So, yeah, let's see. You just never know in the comments. Says, Semenyo is my great niece's ex. He was good when he was at Bristol City. Well, there you go. A little bit of family love there for Semenyo. I like him as well. Fokov says, would like to raid Palace for Gahey, Eze and Wharton. Will £180 million be enough? I don't think we're going to spend £180 million. But yeah, that would be good to buy 3 homegrown players like that for the kind of spine of the team, wouldn't it? Anyway, Ange was also asked about targeting European places in the league. He said this, considering you guys were asking me about relegation 10 days ago, I don't think either is where we're looking at. I do think the league is tight. What's happening to us is going to happen to other clubs. It's coming. People think I've been making all excuses all along. And when I look at what we're doing, it's just a course of that. But trust me, other clubs will feel that as well. It's only mid-February. There's a fair way to go. European football for us this year is important. We're in the Europa League and we've got an opportunity there to make an impact. But I thought we could make an impact in the league. Today was a step towards that. We can play better for sure. We will play better. We've got an opportunity to address the situation we're in. Well, I guess what Ange is saying then is we're going to win all 13 of our next league games. Fantastic news, Rummy. Look, I get excited after Spurs win. I can be quite reactionary, but I did have a little look at the fixtures this morning. I'm like, could do better than people think, but let's take it one game at a time. Let's go to Ipswich, enjoy the week off, get those players fit again, and see what we can do. But it is good to hear Ange Postecoglou talking so positively. That's for sure. Cantab says, is Amorim the reason Man United have 10 injuries? Serious question. Well, they have some injuries. They've just got 2 new injuries last week, but they also had a lot of illness last week rather than injuries. I don't know the nature of Man United's injuries. For me, if it came up that Ruben Amorim's squad had kind of 5 to 6 hamstring injuries or even more over the course of a year or 18 months, then you'd probably have to look at them and say, yeah, potentially that is a reason. Maybe there is something to look for in that. But I know what you're getting at there, mate, and I appreciate your comment. Let's see what happens. I just want to get our players fit and back. Limpy Down Under says, watching Davis being mad against Danso's positioning in the first 10 minutes was funny, as within 40 seconds, Davis saved us 3 times. What a leader. Ben Davis, thoroughly underrated as a Spurs player for the last 10 years, deserves a testimonial. He probably wouldn't ask for one. He's so understated. He is a brilliant centre-back now, always gives 7 out of 10 and gave us great balance yesterday. I'm really glad you brought him up. I think he's severely underrated. He's never been that quick, so it's not like his legs are going to go. And his positioning is excellent. And where he's so brilliant is reading the game and stepping in ahead of the opposition's forward line to intercept the ball. And, he gave away one pretty bad foul yesterday trying to do that where he was caught out. But it was an important foul to give away. He got his booking because otherwise they would have been in and he would have been out of position. And that shows experience. And he has been massive for Spurs this season. And I'd like to see him in the running for one of our players of the year as well, alongside Jed Spence, alongside Deki Kulusevski, when those awards start to get given out. Jay Ashraf says, Barnaby, do you expect Madison to turn up against Ipswich? He's so hot and cold and Ange will sub him as usual. Well, I think he was subbed after 60 minutes yesterday because he's been injured. But I hope that means that he'll be fit and raring to go against Ipswich. He used to play for Norwich, by the way, and they have a huge rivalry. So I'd like to think he'll go to Portman Road, get his foot on the ball and try and make things happen. That's what we've really missed from him whilst he's been injured, especially in those games against Liverpool and Aston Villa, where we basically couldn't get out of our defensive third. We really, really missed James Madison in those games. So I'm excited to have him back. Let's see what else have we got here. El Dante, thank you for your comment. A member as well. Thank you so much, guys. You can be a member of my channel. Only £1 a month really helps me to make this daily content for you guys. All the details of how are in the description box below. El Dante says, Davis has always been a 7 out of 10 player. I completely agree. He always plays well enough. Not exceptional, but he never lets the team down. Big respect to him for being reliable for so many years for us. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I completely agree. An engineer E28 in the comments says, Davis taking man and ball like Steve Perryman lets the opposition know we ain't going to be pushed around. Yeah, listen, Steve Perryman, Tottenham's record appearance maker, huge player back in the especially in the kind of 70s and early 80s, a top player. And I've been talking about Archie Gray potentially being good enough to have a future where he could play as many games as Steve Perryman for Spurs. But yeah, Ben Davis is an absolute 7 out of 10 player. David Blair in the comments says, not the greatest performance, and we were lucky to get away with a win. But you know what? Luck is a great start to get the confidence and get a good run of wins. Completely agree. Now, I've mentioned in the opening and in the title, according to some reports, Liverpool are eyeing a possibility of signing Micky van der Ven in the summer. Now, of course, Liverpool having an unbelievable season. Absolutely unbelievable. But they are potentially going to lose Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah, and Trent Alexander-Arnold on freeze in the summer. Some reports are that maybe Van Dijk and Salah are trying to use the possibility of leaving on a free transfer to get a better contract offer, and maybe that's the case. But you can see why someone like Arne Slot, who has managed in the Dutch league and will have seen a lot of Micky van der Ven as a Dutch centre-back, and thinks, actually, I could have a word in Micky van der Ven's ear and say, listen, you won't be asked to do so many sprints and to press quite as much if you were to come to Liverpool. But for me, the amount of money that Liverpool would have to pay in terms of the Premier League to Premier League tax to get Micky van der Ven out the door, even though Micky van der Ven has had his injuries, I just think it would top 100 million easily for either of those two centre-backs. I just don't think a lot of clubs are going to be paying 100 million plus for centre-backs, especially centre-backs with an injury record like Micky van der Ven. So I don't think that one's likely to happen, but I'm sure it'll make Micky van der Ven feel good to be linked with the club who are most likely going to win the Premier League this season. Also, some reports coming out of Italy that Tottenham, in the last days of the transfer window, tried to sign Santiago Jimenez from Feyenoord. That was ahead of the move that he did make, which was to AC Milan. He'd apparently, the Mexican international, already reached an agreement with Milan, and as a result, didn't listen to Spurs' offer. And that is why Tottenham went for Matthias Tell. As a result, Jimenez had been on our list for a long time. I'd been talking about him, a lot of rumors about him coming to Spurs last summer. So listen, I think we got Solanke ahead of him last summer. We got Tell in now, who can play a number of positions across the front row. Be interesting to see the front row, the forward line. Be interesting to see how Jimenez does in Italy. But yeah, not one I'm that worried about at the moment. And speaking of Micky van der Ven, Ange has been explaining how it's not about the injury with Micky van der Ven anymore as to why he's not playing. It's about changing the mechanics of his body to allow him to handle his pace and style of play and prevent more hamstring injuries. And said this, we've had a few people externally looking at him and giving him some more guidance and information added to our stuff, which he can do differently around not so much the injury, but to help his body adapt to the extreme athlete that he is. You always want to protect your assets, and he's a major asset for this club. And to protect his long-term career for the sake of a couple of weeks is worth it. And I could not agree more. Wrap him in cotton wool, teach him to, I don't know, get in the gym and protect the other muscles around his hamstrings, grow them more so it protects his hamstrings, and just play him in the Europa League. That's all I'm interested in Van der Ven for this season. And Romero now, and Solanke. Just play them in the Europa League. Jacob Builds in the comments says, where is Romero? Not seen him in any videos or at the ground. Seems dodgy. Yeah, I wonder if you're referencing potentially the fact that influencer Angry Ginge was at Qatar airport and said that he saw Christian Romero there. Ange Postecoglou has said that he's training, but yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything about it either. But look, let's see what happens. And thank you to David Blair. Really appreciate you joining as a pro member. Thanks so much. Completely appreciate that. And thank you for all your support, guys. Nearly 500 of you watching this concurrently now. Over 160 likes. Thank you so much for your support. Really loving doing these 12:30 live shows. Now, I spoke at the beginning about this deep dive that the BBC did on their website about the Spurs ownership. And there are so many incredible and relevant points here. So I'm basically going to go through this and give my thoughts on it as we go along. Basically, it's written by Laura Scott and Nizar Kinsella. Really interesting deep dive and worth a look if you haven't seen it already. And it says, fan anger has again been aimed at Chairman Daniel Levy, vocalized in persistent Levy out calls from supporters, both home and away. Club sources from Tottenham have told BBC that protests are hurting Daniel Levy, who attends almost every game and sits stoically through the criticism. Tottenham are one of the busiest clubs in the transfer window, but that has not satisfied some fans who criticise a recruitment policy mainly focused on under-21 players with potential resale value, and who regularly accuse Levy of acting too slowly in the market and putting profits above success on the pitch. And that is what had led to yesterday's sit-down protest led by a supporter group called, as we know, Change for Tottenham. And actually, let me know what you think, guys. I'm thinking of maybe asking some guys from Change for Tottenham to come on and do an interview. I listened to their interview on the Fighting Cock, or it's either on the Fighting Cock podcast or the Fighting Cock Flav's. He's got a sister podcast to them, which I can't quite remember the name of at the moment, but they're both excellent podcasts. And Flav really listened out to their points. But there were some things in listening to the Change for Tottenham group that I just wanted to kind of offer some devil's advocate on. I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the things Levy has done that have led us to here and how that group feel about them too. Because they're not angry, the Change for Tottenham people. They're really they're quite articulate, and I enjoyed listening to them. So let me know in the the lab. That's right. PKD81 says the lab. They were on the lab. Check out that podcast. Really good with Flav. But let me know in the comments. Would you like me to do an interview with some of those guys, the Change for Tottenham people? I think it would be interesting to hear from them and just be able to kind of have more of a conversation about it, as well as just hear what they thought. Anyway, going on about the sit-down protest, the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust released 5 core principles that they want to hold Levy to account on. Those were a commitment to winning with investment, attract and retain talent with competitive wages, developing elite youth talent, leading with integrity, and to be financially sustainable whilst keeping tickets affordable and engaging with fans. Now, listen, let me know what you think, but I would agree with all of those from the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. I think they are all completely right. Those kind of principles. That is the dream, that we would be able to adhere to all of those principles. But I do think the growth of the club and how we grow this club, and the patience required means that it's not able to pull all of those things in at once. Of course, first and foremost, some change for Tottenham would be good if Levy was able to stop raising the ticket prices, to be honest. But he's unwilling to do that. And another optic that I think doesn't look good for Daniel Levy is the fact that he does not want. What am I trying to say here? Is the fact that he doesn't want to lower the ticket prices, and he doesn't want to lower his annual wage either. Another optic thing that does not look good for him. BBC Sport went on to speak to several people, both on and off the record, to try and understand the fuller picture of Levy's Tottenham regime. Some of the key points made were these. Levy will step aside when he feels it's right for Spurs, and every option is open for different future ownership structures. As they mentioned, he's hurt by protests, hurt by results, and has opted to sit through the Levy out chance rather than hide away. How do you feel, guys, about him being at every game? I think there is one angle of it that I can see where he's coming from, where he's like, oh, I'm going to show I'm not hiding away, that I take the rough with the smooth, etc., etc. But also, and I mentioned this before, I saw clips of him on social media getting off the bus with the team when they went to Goodison for that game where we were 3-0 down at halftime. Like, don't be on the bus with the team, mate. It's like the optics weren't great on him having breakfast with the team, I didn't think, during the Amazon documentary. It's, mate, keep it different. Keep yourself away from the team. Keep the finances side, the business side, away from the playing side. Don't muddy the waters. So for me, I wouldn't mind if Levy didn't turn up to some of the games. I think it might benefit everyone, to be honest. I think chairman can sometimes be too involved. You hear lots of stories about chairman going into the dressing room after games and giving their opinions. No, that should be a no-no at every club. I'm not suggesting we know for sure Levy does that, but I think just some more distance would be good. There's an acceptance apparently that Spurs have not always spent well in the transfer market, but belief from the top brass that recent managers, including Postecoglou, have been back financially. And I will say, I think if you look at the net spend table over the last few years, especially considering we've got such debt after moving into the stadium, that is true. Where we haven't spent the money, and certainly not since the likes of Kane and Dyer and Lloris have left the club, and Perisic, we have not spent the money on wages since then. The club leadership feel that they have come closer to winning more than just the 2008 League Cup during the ENIC Levy era, having reached 15 semi-finals and 6 finals. Well, I don't think that is something that those people in the board should use as a defense. I don't think that's a justification as a defense of reaching 15 semi-finals and 6 finals. That, I think, is a perfect example of where actually if you spent more money on wages and you went up a level in terms of what you're willing to spend to get those better players who have the winning mentality to get you over the line in those semi-finals and finals, then maybe we would not be having these conversations in the first place. Should just say in the comments, Joe says a chairman should be at every game, but agrees not on the bus. Levy, he says Levy needs to go, assuming it's he, it might be she, sorry Joe. Levy needs to go that extra 20 to 30%, which is what he doesn't do. That's my main gripe. And I think that's what we're talking about, isn't it? Sources who have worked with Levy say he does not communicate well enough and suggest the executive team are too similar, hence occasional own goals on policies. This is an interesting one for me because before I've mentioned Donna Marie Cullen. I met a woman once when I was out who used to work for Spurs, and says that there is a strange relationship between Levy and Donna Marie Cullen, and also that Daniel Levy's wife is someone who used to be his assistant. And so that shows how kind of insular it can be. Maybe Daniel Levy's one of those people who doesn't trust people easily, and you could see why he wouldn't. You know, he's a man of great means and an owner of a big corporation, big company. So it will be hard to trust people, but sometimes you need to let people in from the outside. And if it's just a little bit too insular in that top leadership group, that is not a positive thing for the club. Sources who've worked with Levy says he does not communicate well enough and suggests the executive team are too similar. Like I said, occasional own goals. I've repeated that. Sorry, my mistake. Football finance expert Kieran Maguire says any discussion of Levy's tenure must be framed by Tottenham becoming, in his words, the most profitable club in Premier League history because of the money their new stadium generates, a historically lower wage structure, and a degree of caution on transfer spending. He describes Spurs as a superb cash-making machine who've outperformed any other club in England. Now, you'd think that's all positive, wouldn't you? Maguire outlined. His figures show that from 2001 to 2023, Tottenham made £171 million in profit. Burnley was second on 159 million, with Arsenal third on 105 million. In the past decade, Spurs have the 6th highest total wage bill in the Premier League, 1.6 billion versus Man City, 2.9 billion, and then the 6th highest transfer spend with 1.3 billion versus Chelsea's 2.8 billion as the most, with the 5th highest net spend over a similar period. Tottenham fans pay among the highest season ticket prices and matchday prices in the top flight, and Levy, as I mentioned, has the highest chief executive pay of Premier League clubs that declare such data. In 2023, the most recent figures available, Spurs' highest paid director, unnamed but assumed to be Daniel Levy, earned £6.6 million. So they are numbers that unfortunately, although you'd think it would be a positive that we are, as Kieran Maguire said, the most profitable club in Premier League history and run as a superb cash-making machine, that's where the anger from the fan base comes in, especially those younger people in the fan base who may have only supported Spurs for the last 10, 15 years. So they've perpetually seen Spurs finish in the top 6, but never winning anything, never topping the league. And I can see that frustration. But I have to state again the reality. ENIC are not and never, ever have been and never claimed to be a company who will spend their own money on their club. That's not who they are. They are an investment fund. They always have been. And when ENIC bought the club of Alan Sugar, a lot of people were like, great, we've got Alan Sugar out because he was terrible. And when Alan Sugar bought it of Irving Scholar, people were upset because he pushed out Terry Venables, but they were like, well, at least we're not going to go bankrupt now because we've got Alan Sugar. When you are rich enough and single-minded enough to want to be a chairman of or an owner of a Premier League club, you are going to be someone who wants to plump it up, to make it as good a business as you possibly can. And we're in a difficult situation with ENIC because then they don't have, and they don't claim to have, and they don't want to have money in the coffers of their own that they want to spend in the club. On the club, they want to grow it sustainably through infrastructure. That's what the Northumberland Development Project was all about from 20 years ago. And one of the biggest problems that Tottenham have, ironically, is that Pochettino did so well in his tenure. He got us ahead of the Northumberland Development Project plan on the pitch by about probably as much as 7 or 8 years. The plan was move into the stadium, be patient for 6, 7 years, as Arsenal had to be, then start getting regularly into the Champions League, then push on towards trying to win things. So that has led to a bit of a sense of entitlement, which we deserve. Of course we do. We like it said, we pay the highest season ticket. So if you charge the highest, you should expect the most. But there does need to be a degree of patience as well, and that is very difficult to have at the moment. So that is what is being talked about then. Let's see what you guys are saying in the comments. John Fitzpatrick, did I protest yesterday? No, I didn't because, firstly, I'm not really the protesting type. I'll be totally honest with you. I don't feel strongly enough about it. Like I said, I'm not Levy in or ENIC in, and I'm not really them out either. I'm a little bit more be careful what you wish for, but also I do live watch-alongs. So I was doing a live watch-along on the show. Graham Hill says, and still is accountable when we have good sides out against Palace, Wolves, Leicester, worst team in the Premier, Ipswich. Can't hide behind injuries constantly. Kate Rickson, thanks for your comment. Barnaby, just don't buy enough quality. We will be left behind. Lovely stadium, but no furniture. Just using Maurizio Pochettino's old comment then, didn't he? Didn't she, sorry, about not having the furniture to match the stadium. Club Insiders, just to go on with this BBC deep dive, because I do think it's fascinating, and please do let me know in the comments what you think about it. Club Insiders describe Levy as shy, quiet, and hardworking, and a man who loves the club and is affected by fan criticism. And I have to say, I believe that. I know a lot of people love to slag Levy off and say he doesn't care about Tottenham. I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. That is bullshit. He clearly does. I think he goes about it the wrong way sometimes. When we got to the Champions League final, he wanted to show how much he cared about the players by buying them a watch and engraving it with Champions League finalists. It shows he cares, but he doesn't quite get the optics all the time, because that just showed like he was happy to be in the final. And we shouldn't have been happy to be in the final. We reacted to that semi-final win. And of course, it was an incredible moment in time. And probably very few of us, certainly those of us of my age or older, would have thought we would ever see that. But we reacted on that pitch in Amsterdam. All of us did. I was in Amsterdam Square, Pochettino on the pitch, the players on the pitch, Harry Kane running down from the stadium. We acted like we'd won the Champions League, and we hadn't. We'd got to the final. And I'm afraid that plays into that, dare I say it, as Carragher says, that kind of loser's mentality. And that's what's got to change. And I think Ange Postecoglou is trying to change that. That's why he was so upset last season when the fans wanted us to lose to Man City. So all of these things play into it. And I think Postecoglou is potentially a man who, if we can get his first team on the pitch regularly, who has enough experience to see us through those kind of negative thoughts, which seep through the club from the top to the bottom. Anyway, going on. Some of the own goals talked about in Daniel Levy's time, as well as what I've just mentioned, include the government furlough scheme during COVID, phasing out senior concession tickets. They're partly because Levy does not surround himself with the best people, according to this BBC article. They describe the executive leadership and club board, which includes operations and finance director Matthew Collicott and executive director Donna Maria Cullen, as people too similar to Levy, who will sit with their heads in their phones rather than people who make up for Levy's weaknesses. So that is where Tottenham need to make change. That's where I'd agree with change for Tottenham. We need changes at the top. More people in who have experienced success at other football clubs. That is what Manchester City did. They didn't just spend the money from a sports washing state, oil state. They spent it wisely. They brought all of the top brass in from Barcelona who had won everything there. And they brought those top brass in before they brought in Pep Guardiola, in the hope that they would be able to persuade Pep Guardiola, who was the best in class manager. And that is where Tottenham are going to have to spend their money in future, especially if indeed they get investment that can be spent on the pitch. They have to bring in people right at the top of the club who can take the pressure off Levy and who have succeeded before. That's what we need. I'm sure of it. The source says that Levy does not successfully deliver his message about caring for the club because he is not a strong public speaker and chooses to avoid it. Adding one interview or being visible once a year is not a lot. While Tottenham's football structure has changed frequently, including technical directors, managing directors, and heads of football operations, sources say the club rigidly stick to Levy's philosophy and recruitment policy to buy young players with promise who can add value. Well, that's true at the moment. And we've just gone over 500 concurrent viewers, guys. Thank you so much for your support. 200 likes as well. Thank you so much. Please do press subscribe if you're not already a subscriber to my channel for daily Tottenham Hotspur content every afternoon live at 12:30 on YouTube. That for me is not purely true about us only ever buying young players with promise who can add value, because when when Mourinho was in and Conte was in, Levy kind of bent to what they wanted a bit more. Signings like Matt Doherty, even Perisic. You cannot say that we didn't change the strategy then. What's happened now is we're going back to the previous strategy that worked for us in the lead up to then Pochettino coming in, taking those young players when they were then coming into their peak and really building a team. And that is why Ange Postecoglou is saying, I hope I'm still here in 3 years' time when this young team starts to reach its peak. Sources at the club believe that Levy will step aside when he feels it's right for Tottenham. They say he would not be motivated by vanity to stay on if there was an outright takeover, and the club remains open to investment with all future ownership structures on the table. Another source, speaking honestly, backed his passion for the club and said the idea that the chairman does not care because he rarely shows emotion is nonsense. They added that Levy is unrelenting, working crazy hours, which can be tough and tiring for colleagues, and he always wants more, something which can grate with people who do not like that style of leadership. Yeah, well, that is something I would agree with. And I'd be intrigued to see what you guys say in the comments, especially as, Gen Z start getting involved in the workplace and in football. The reality is that micromanaging style of leadership is not appreciated these days by the younger generations. And I think we saw enough evidence when the stadium was being built of the stadium developers who came out and did interviews and said how Daniel Levy would message them at 3, 4 in the morning. Endless thoughts, endless micromanagement. And that probably doesn't benefit throughout the club at Tottenham. I really do think that is a problem. And hopefully Levy reads this deep dive himself and learns from it. Because as the Change for Tottenham boys are saying, they don't care what change means. They don't necessarily even mean Levy has to leave. It's about, can we change so that we pay more wages? Can we change so that the board structure changes so we can get more success in at the top of the club and learn how to be winners? That is the last piece of the jigsaw for Tottenham. The infrastructure is there now. The size of the club is there now. The reputation around the world is there now. We need success on the pitch, and we need to do that. We need to be strategic about it and systematic about it and ruthless about it. While Levy may be the focal point of protest, it was stressed that he is a minority shareholder of the club through his own family trust, and ENIC, itself mostly owned by the Lewis family trust, remains the majority owner. That means any change or purchase would need approval from the Lewis family, and there are other minority shareholders with a say. During the current protest, the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust has expressed frustration but has not called for Levy to leave, unlike Change for Tottenham, which is a smaller splinter group looking to apply pressure in internal fan politics and towards the club. Well, when I heard them on the podcast last week, even they were saying, like I said before, it's not all about Levy leaving, it's about change, however that change could manifest itself. So I like the sound of that. I like the sound of it just being all about how can we make this more positive for Tottenham on the pitch. Other sources agreed the only realistic way in which Levy would leave Spurs would be on his own terms. He's the Premier League's highest paid chief executive, earning an estimated £50 million plus over his 25 years in charge. This week, a Guardian article reported, and I talked about it in my videos last week, potential interest in Spurs from an unnamed Qatari consortium, although sources with knowledge of Spurs' ownership situation played it down. In 2023, when Paris Saint-Germain's owners Qatari Sports Investment were exploring the possibility of a minority stake in an English club, Spurs were one of the teams linked. Levy maintains a close relationship with PSG and QSI chairman Nasser El Khalifi. One source added that Levy, a renowned negotiator famously described by Sir Alex Ferguson as more painful to deal with than a hip replacement, will demand a high price for Spurs given their elite facilities, brand, London premium, and the revenue the club now generates. And that's exactly what I was just talking about. Everything there. Everything is there. All those things, they are there. They are there. So it's just going to take the money, the cash richness in the club to take us to the next stage and strategic good decision making. Various reports in recent years have valued at Spurs at between 3.5 billion and 4 billion pounds. Chelsea were bought in a deal worth up to 4.25 billion from Roman Abramovich in 2022 by Todd Bowley and a consortium with Clearlake Capital. The purchase price was £2.5 billion, with a commitment to spending 1.75 billion over the next 10 years. And by God, are they spending that money? Scattergun spending. But they've jumped ahead of us in the Premier League. But £2.5 billion was the purchase price. Don't forget, Chelsea do not own their ground. Stamford Bridge is owned by the Chelsea Pitch Owners Association, and Chelsea struggling to make that ground bigger. They don't have permission. It's hard to build in that area. And Clearlake and Todd Bowley are looking at ways to expand. So that's why that would be a little cheaper than Tottenham, even though it is in a better area in terms of housing prices and land property, etc., etc. Meanwhile, some more comparisons. So Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos bought a 25% stake in Manchester United for 1.03 billion in December 2023, in a process which included a rival bid from Qatar's Sheikh Jassim, reported to be near £5 billion for all of the club. Despite those huge sums, both clubs, unlike Tottenham, need major investment in their stadiums, as I said, to unlock bigger commercial earning potential. According to the first source, the period when Tottenham were building their new 1.2 billion stadium between 2017 and 2019 meant Levy was all consumed and the board left everyone to do their jobs. Spurs secured Champions League football under Pochettino for 4 consecutive seasons and were beaten in the final by Liverpool in 2019. This source suggested Levy's approach, namely open to conversations but set in his ways, has meant a lot of people with off-field expertise have left Spurs over the years for more influential jobs. They mentioned Paul Barber, Michael Edwards, John McDermott, and Trevor Birch, who are all at Spurs, have left to go on to big, important jobs within the Premier League and international football. It could be argued that many of these highly rated executives enjoyed good careers at Tottenham before simply moving on, but the source claims they left the building far too easily. So that really ties into what I'm saying again, doesn't it? We need to get better talent at the top level of the club, the boardroom level, making proper strategic decisions that will lead to us winning on the pitch. Another source, again speaking anonymously, pointed out that Levy has delivered a core infrastructure that is probably the best in the world and suggested that he would give the club an incredible foundation for future success, but probably after Levy's time. Let's think about this, guys. If you can put yourself for a minute in Daniel Levy's shoes, how hard must that be for him to kind of hear people talking about, you've done an amazing job, but the success will only come when you leave. You can see, even if you've got even a tiny ego, you can see why he is wanting to hang on until there's some success on the pitch so that he can take some of that credit for all of the work he's put in over 20 years. So I can kind of understand it, but it is not positive for Tottenham, unfortunately. The source added that Levy, Collicott and Cullen are probably an unbreakable group given their longevity and close relationships, but did stress they will not be at Tottenham forever. It was suggested to BBC Sport that personal factors such as age and the trio's own health or the health of relatives could lead them to reevaluate. Well, that's a bit of a bleak way to look at it as far as I'm concerned. And then finally, Tottenham insiders accept they have not always spent well and have made transfer mistakes in the past, but believe they have backed recent managers, as mentioned. It also felt that raising profits to record levels is the only way Tottenham can compete with teams like Manchester City and Newcastle and their ownership models, aka sports washing. That's my words. Spurs sources feel they've been close to winning more trophies than just one in the last 20 years. And the 5 other clubs in the traditional top 6 are either richer or bigger, by which I guess they mean, heritage clubs with more tradition in terms of winning things like Liverpool. We don't make any apologies that we are trying to increase our revenue base to invest more in our teams. If that means raising money through concerts to invest in the teams, then I don't apologize at all, Levy said at the fan forum. We announced with our last financial results, that we believe this club needs a bigger capital base because we've got a lot of exciting projects on the horizon. We want to make further investment in the teams. Some form of minority investment is what we're looking for. In further defense of Levy, and this is an important point to end on, I think, One source pointed to fan discontent at Arsenal owner Stan Kroenke in 2019 to 2021, as well as Manchester United's 12 months of troubles under new owner Jim Radcliffe. They believe a vocal minority of fans simply want success now, but should be careful what they wish for with calls for change. They added, Spurs haven't got the formula on the pitch yet, but it will come. And I do think that's an important point to end on. Manchester United fans thought Jim Radcliffe would be the answer. They thought Ruben Amorim would be the answer short term. No, it's not been the answer. Jim Ratcliffe is really just a front for the Glazers taking all of the trouble. And it's not been great there. And I think a degree of patience is needed. That doesn't mean that I think, we could benefit, like I've said time and time again, from more experience, more winning mentality in the boardroom, a change there. Absolutely. But we are not getting points deductions. We have not been relegated. And a lot of the clubs, I'm afraid to say, that I grew up watching when they were bigger and better than Spurs have been relegated. The likes of Villa, likes of Nottingham Forest, who are both in good positions now, but they've had some difficult times. So just be careful what you wish for. Let's see what you guys are saying in the comments before I leave you guys. The sky is falling. Thank you for your comments. Says, most of the fans with big loud voices on social media don't care about the club. They're more about the sounds of their own voices. It's getting nauseating. PKD81 says, Levy is a calculating operator. He will weather this storm as he has several others. His goal is pocketing a £1 billion exit, not winning the Premier League. Baguette and Bleu says Enoch and Levy love trophies in the form of paper that insulates their pockets, not in the form of metal that fills their trophy cabinets. Let's see. Engineer E28 says it wasn't Levy's fault that we didn't start more in the Champions League final instead of a half-fit Kane. I have to say, listen, that is one that keeps getting thrown at Pochettino. But if he'd started more ahead of Kane and Lucas Moura had played in the way that he did, I'm afraid, in the majority of his games for Spurs, then everybody would have been said that Pochettino was mental for not starting Harry Kane. I'm sorry, that was a one you can barely win or lose. Subdue Light says it's not only more wages, but on the right players, not on Rashford, Sancho's, Antony's or Ndombele's. Christian Valdini says, did you use Matt Doherty as an example of Levy pushing the boat out? No, I used him as an example of Tottenham buying players for managers that request different types of players to the young footballers that Tottenham were buying before Pochettino's side time and now when they've reverted back to the strategy of buying players who are young and hungry and can grow with the club. That's what I was saying. Scarecrow says 18 months is not enough time to rebuild. It takes at least 3 to 4 years to rebuild. Listen, guys, it's been a bit of a long live show today, but I was very happy to do that because I wanted to go through that deep dive and also talk all about that Manchester United win. We haven't had the opportunity to talk at length after a victory. I love these 12:30 live chats, guys. So please, once again, do give this video a like if you haven't already. Please do press subscribe on the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Daily live chats at 12:30 about all things Tottenham Hotspur, and then during the transfer windows, all the transfer rumours from Spurs and across the Premier League as well. Please do enjoy the rest of your Monday, and yeah, let's talk again tomorrow. Thanks again, and come on, you Spurs.